Tim Legler from the Mothership here, joining us on loan from the Mothership. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. I love bowling too. I have my own bowling shoes I bought, which is weird, I know, but I have a 15, and a lot of those 15s at the bowling alleys, they're so stretched out. The Velcro straps, they like slip off your feet. So I bought my own bowling shoes. I love to bowl.
I have my own bowling shoes, and I had my own bowling ball as well. Did you guys ever bowl in the NBA?
No, never. Never. I love it. I swear. I could go bowling 2-3 times a week. That's how much I love doing it.
Thanks for coming on. That's all I wanted to know, Tim. If you,
all right, man.
if you went
thanks
bowling.
for having me.
So Tim is a former player and one of the great shooters in NBA history. If you played now, what would your career be like now as opposed to what it was?
Well, first of all, even back then, if I didn't have that knee injury I had at 29 years old, you tack another 6-7 years onto the end of it, it would look different too. But today, playing in this style, this system, and I'm going out there every night, Dan, and I'm expecting to take 6, 8, 10 3-point shots a night. Are you kidding me? With that kind of freedom mentally to know that there is no such thing as a bad three that I could take, I can't imagine like what that would do to unleash, you have no inhibition. And for a great shooter to have no inhibition whatsoever, especially as a role player, believe me, I watch it every night. I just can't believe the freedom that these guys have.
But who do you think their career would have changed if they had played today? Let's say they played in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that given this game now, we would look at them differently.
I think any of the guys that were kind of like the way I played. I mean, even a guy like Kerr, he and I, battled it out. We were basically the same exact years in the league, very similar type players. Can you imagine, being able to come out and knowing that they almost expect you to shoot the ball every time you touch it? Where, when I played, it was incomprehensible on a 3-on-2 break to fan out for a 3-point shot. That's just not what you did. You were not taught the game that way. And I felt like the green light on teams I played on, but the green light was a different shade of green. That's what I'm saying. You still had to think through the process. Is this a good shot? Isn't it? You knew what the team was trying to get. A lot of when I played, it was inside out bait. We had a bunch of great post players in Washington. That ball was going in there first, guarantee you, up the floor, allow double teams to happen. The ball gets moved around the perimeter, and then you're allowed to take the shot. But some of these shots these guys take in the first 5-6 seconds of the shot clock, and no one even bats an eye at it. Coaches, they clap their hands on a miss on a shot, that quickly. It really blows my mind. But look, I'm all for it. I'm happy for the players to have that kind of freedom. I wish I did, though.
We've been talking about Russell Westbrook's place in history. His head coach, Scottie Brooks, said he might be the second greatest point guard of all time. We've kind of lost these designations, though, Legs, because Steph Curry is not a point guard, but can I put him in the category of, point guards?
No, I agree with you. Yes, you can, I guess, because of the amount of time he's got the ball in his hands, as an initial playmaker, primary ball handler up the floor. That's kind of how I describe who the point guard is. But you're right, it's all blurred. I mean, Luka Doncic is listed as a forward, right? Is that not a point guard? LeBron James is a point guard. He's been a point guard his entire career, and we don't call him a point guard. So it's really about who dominates the ball and who's the primary ball handler, playmaker, decision maker, most possessions. That would be Curry. But you're right. I mean, they play the game completely differently than what you and I would have thought of a traditional point guard played the position like growing up.
But you have Magic as the greatest point guard of all time.
Yes, definitely. No question.
Second is?
Oh, my goodness. Second, it starts to get a little bit more debatable. Now, one of the guys that I never got to see play, I don't know, how much, film you've seen on the guy, but Oscar Robertson, was he a point guard? Because there are people that are going to say he's the second greatest point guard of all time. Is it John Stockton? When you look at a guy that set the table for everybody and what he did defensively too, is John Stockton the second greatest point guard? Is it Curry? I think Curry has played himself now into that position. He will be labeled a point guard historically forever. So is he? I think now it's not out of the question that Steph Curry is in that discussion and in that debate. And by the way, I know a lot of people, Dan, I've debated this with, that fun game where you say, okay, let's draft. You take 5, I take 5, one at a time, and let's go play one game to win everything. Historically, all the players that have ever played in the NBA, If you tell me you got first pick and you're taking Magic Johnson at point and I can't get him and I take Steph Curry, I'll be okay with that decision. I think I'm going to do pretty well in that game with Steph Curry as my guy at the point in an all-time game with 10 guys.
What about Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas is in there as well. I think Isaiah Thomas probably doesn't get as much credit as some of the other guys, particularly some of the guys, the contemporary guys now, because he wasn't really an explosive scorer unless he absolutely had to be. And right now, we're putting such an emphasis on the three-point shot and the eye-popping scoring numbers that these point guards put up, guys like Lillard and Curry, Westbrook a lot of nights, that we lose sight of what Isaiah Thomas was taught that position was supposed to look like. And on any given night, there's no question in my mind Isaiah Thomas could average 25 to 30 points if that's what he wanted to do in a given season. He didn't view it that way. That position and that team had great balance that he played on.
He's Tim Legler, ESPN NBA analyst. Did the Clippers try to avoid the Lakers?
Probably. And I think that's why Tyronn Lue was so testy about the question.
But do you have any problem with that?
No, I don't. I don't have a problem with it at all. It's one of those things where you can't control it. You know, it's not as if there are rules in place to prevent it. There's nothing you can do about it. Just like load management, just like anything else. They want guys to sit certain nights. They have criteria for it. How are you supposed to prevent a team from saying, oh, you know what, guys got a little bit of a tight hammy tonight. The groin last night, he felt a little twinge. We're going to sit him out this game. You can't prevent it. You can't call them liars. It's something that is very difficult to prove. It won't show up on an MRI. So you can sit guys out when you want to. And what happens at the end of the year? This is going on for a long time, by the way, the manipulation of lineups at the end of the season for a lot of different reasons. So no, I don't have a problem with it. The only problem I have with it is what message does it send to your team if that's what you're trying to do? So internally, psychologically, I got a little bit of a problem with it because if you think you can win it, you shouldn't care who you play when you play them. But no, I don't have a problem with it because everyone around the league manipulates their lineups for different reasons.
Yeah, but I want the Lakers now, Tim. I just if they start rolling, then I don't want any part of that. If I'm the Suns, the Jazz, the Clippers, let me take my shot now and see if I can knock you out early.
I completely agree. And I use the analogy with the Lakers. They're a prize fighter. And you've got to come out and you've got to catch them with a huge hook or an uppercut in the first 30 seconds of the fight. And if you don't, each round, they're going to get stronger. And that's what's going to happen with the Lakers. Look, they might lose tonight. Wouldn't shock me. You know, they haven't played together a lot here at the end of the year, LeBron and AD. Curry's on fire. Warriors are playing well. Not going to be shocked if the Lakers lose, but they're not going to lose 2 games in a row. They're going to get in. And then they take a sigh of relief. Okay, we dodged disaster. Now you got us in a 7-game series. Each game, each round, they get stronger. And I expect them to be back in the NBA Finals. It's a weird situation. They're going to come in as a 7 or 8 seed and be favored immediately. That's a very weird thing to happen in the NBA. And it's very unfortunate for Utah or Phoenix to end up getting that team and when you had the year that you did as a 1 or 2 seed.
Who has a better chance against the Lakers? The Clippers, the Jazz, the Nuggets, Suns, Portland?
I would have said Denver, but I don't know how you overcome Jamal Murray not being there. And as good as Michael Porter is, and he's headed for stardom, and he's been unbelievable really the last couple of months, can he do that every night against that team? So I don't think he's quite there yet for that. There'll be inconsistency there. You don't have Jamal Murray. That's an impossible task. So I don't think it's Denver anymore. I would probably say the Clippers, but there's a huge caveat, and it's on Paul George's shoulders. There's a few players going into this postseason, Dan, with an enormous amount of pressure on them. Giannis has a lot of pressure on him. I think Paul George is in that category. I think James Harden is in that category. Those 3 guys probably have more pressure on them than anybody else in the postseason because of some of their playoff failures. Paul George's seasons typically end in a fiery crash where he doesn't play well when they absolutely have to have him. In last year's Game 7 against Denver is another example of that. And he had games like that in Oklahoma City. He had a couple times like that in Indiana. Go back and look at the last game of Paul George's season. Typically, not great. He's got to be big for them to have a chance. But I do think probably the talent of Kawhi and Paul George gives them the best chance against AD and LeBron.
Any chance for the Celtics against the Nets?
I say, look, Jason Tatum's got to be the best player on the floor in any night in which they win. How much can you expect that out of one guy when you're playing against the firepower that the Nets have? There's never been a collection of offenses, raw offensive talent at the top of one roster in the history of this league. That's what you're facing. He went to the line 17 times last night. He was sensational. The Nets aren't going to foul him that much. They're going to make him make more shots than that, not let him get into a rhythm at the foul line. And even if he is great in this series, which I think he can be, Kemba Walker has to be even better probably. Yeah. And he's been really good lately. But is Kemba Walker going to give you 25 a night in this series? I don't think so. And that's what it would take to even win, I think, 2 games. I think it's probably a 5-game series. Maybe the Celtics get an early split. We get interested for a second. At the end of the day, I do not know how any team is supposed to match the firepower of what those 3 guys bring to the table, because they can beat you on every platform offensively.
Who's your MVP?
Wow, it was Embiid most of the season, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to pull for the guy that was there every night, and I know that's a big part of this argument. I typically defend guys that miss a little bit of time. In fact, Embiid for Rookie of the Year, I thought it was a joke that he didn't win it, even though he played 31 games. I said, wait a second, you're going to tell me my eyes did not see Joel Embiid as the most dominant rookie player that year, first-year player? Obviously he was. People thought he didn't play enough, so Malcolm Brogdon gets Rookie of the Year. I was against that. I'm at the point now with LeBron missing so much time, Embiid missing so much time, Harden missing so much time. They were the 3 guys, I think, in the mix. If we're going to reward a guy for being there every night, that also, by the way, is 26, 11, and 8, I'm all for it. So I think Jokic is deserving of it, and I think Jokic will win it. But I thought Joel Embiid for 75, 80% of the season was the MVP. It just got to the point he just missed a little bit too much time, and I think Jokic should be rewarded for being there every night.
How many times did you face the Bulls when they had Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman?
I don't know the number of games off the top of my head, but I'll tell you this. My career was 1990 to 2000. I was in the Eastern Conference for a good part of that. They won 6 titles during that time. I saw more than my share of those guys. And to this day, one of the most, intimidating things you faced as a player, they were the only team I ever played against in the NBA that pressed after free throws and got away with it. When you got Rodman, Pippen, Jordan, Ron Harper picking you up in the backcourt in a 1-2-1-1 trap with that kind of length, it was amazing to see point guards sort of just run up the floor and wave at you like, yeah, get it, legs. You got it. Bring it up. Because that first pass in the deep corner, and you turn and you got Rodman running at you with Scottie Pippen, and it was like an eclipse. So yeah, I saw more than my share, and to this day, that's the greatest defensive team that certainly I ever played against. But I think that's the best defensive team I've ever seen to this day. Were those mid-90s Bulls teams?
But the best defender out of that group was who?
Scottie Pippen. I think Scottie Pippen is the best defensive player, maybe outside of Bill Russell, and again, a guy I didn't see play, but obviously different roles. Scottie Pippen's the best defender I've ever seen because he was not only the best individual defender, he was the best team help defender as well. The ground he covered, his IQ, his communication, his instincts, combined with 6'8", fingertips touching both sidelines, kind of a nightmare. You came off screens. I played against him. He'd switch. Jordan be on me. They'd switch on the baseline and come off a down screen. I knew I had enough separation to get a clean shot off because I'd done it a million times in my life. Catch, turn, pivot, turn, left shoulder, go to square up, and all of a sudden this arm would come out of nowhere. And now you're going up and you're having to make a pass in midair. That was the recover ability of Scottie Pippen. He was special, one of a kind in the way that he covered ground out there.
You ever make Jordan mad?
Yes, I did, because Jordan loved to gamble defensively. And so he would turn his head a lot. Yeah, he did. That's why I threw defensively in there, because there's another level of gambling Michael likes as well. But he was the kind of guy that, he'd be guarding me. And obviously I wasn't going to do a ton off the dribble against a guy like that. So he knew kind of I was going to spot up and wait. He loved to turn his head, and did he love to rake down in the post, try to go get Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, Rasheed Wallace, get those guys from behind when they'd make a move to the middle. I would relocate. Ball would come out, get some space. So, yes, I remember a game which I hit a couple of threes because he turned his head and left me. And I remember after the second or third one, running down the court and Michael saying to me on the way down the court, well, that's it for you. I'm not leaving you again. And it's pretty much like the equivalent of, I guess, the water company shutting your main off. Like your water is shut off now. And that's kind of how you felt. So at that point, we're going to have to get it in transition. Where Michael is picking up somebody else if that's what you want.
Isn't that amazing? He's telling you your night's done, and you know that he's right.
Yeah. And you know what? If you're making threes against Michael Jordan, and I kind of felt like, hey, that's okay. I already had my night, man. I hit some threes against you. But, he actually, it's funny. I have a picture in my house, and he and I are standing next to each other. It's kind of cool. It's just 23-23, our backs, Jordan, Legler. We're talking to each other. I got a little smirk on my face. We're talking, and somebody said, oh, was that Jordan talking trash to you? And I said, no, actually, that was the first game I played after the three-point shootout in San Antonio when I won it. We played Chicago on the road the very first game after that. And actually, my daughter was born that week, my first child. They made a big story about that All-Star weekend when I won it. And he was actually asking me about that. He was like, hey, get home and see that little girl congratulated me on winning the three-point shootout. And that's what that picture captured. I just got lucky. Someone happened to take that picture at that time. And it's a pretty cool thing. So obviously, greatest of all time. That nothing's ever going to change my mind about that because I saw it up close and personal, too personal, seeing that team as many times as I did in the 90s. But that was a cool moment for me because it showed you the humanity of Michael Jordan as well and his awareness of kind of like what was going on. And for a guy like me, that was a year which I had a breakout year, and that was a national moment for me. For Michael Jordan to recognize that was pretty cool.
Legs, great to talk to you as always. Thanks for the stories.
Thanks, Dan. You got it.
That's Tim Legler, ESPN NBA analyst.